Yeah, cars are rad, but it's easy to spend too much on them. We're going to cover 3 tips to avoid doing that. Just kidding. We don't do tips here. We do analysis and insights. We will cover the 3 ways to overspend on a car, and that's where the down payment is too low, or the loan is too long, or the interest is too high. Let's dig. The following are not financial advice. They are my thoughts. Welcome to the Zestified channel. I'm Asan. We focus on smart shopping and spending. Now, what do we mean by overspending on a car anyway? We can think of this from an engineering point of view where we define overspending on a car as where the cost of paying and using a car sacrifices the other goals in life. Now, okay, it can be really hard to know what your other goals in life are, and there's ways to approximate that. That's beyond this video, but we're going to focus on the main ways to overspend on a car and avoiding that. So those main ways, again, are where your down payment is too low, or the loan term is too long, or the interest rate for the loan is too high for you specifically. Okay, we're going to analyze some scenarios, but it's important to cover the loan payment formula. And here we have M is the monthly payment for the formula. A is the loan amount that you get to get the car. R is the annual interest. N is commonly 12 for 12 months in a year. And T is the number of years for the loan. Next, we can come up with the total payment you would make based on that loan payment formula. We take the loan payment formula, just multiply both sides by N times T. So N being 12, T being the loan term, so the number of years of the loan, and you get the total payment you make for the car that you're going to get with a down payment and a loan. Now, it's safe to assume that that total payment would be greater than the loan amount that you would get. So meaning that total payment would be greater than A, right? So we're actually going to prove that later on in this video. But for now, let's take what we have here and analyze some scenarios with regards to down payment, loan term, and interest rate being too high. Okay, let's look at a situation where the only difference is the down payment. So here in this column, we have A, where we have the okay scenario. So this is usually, you can think of this as where maybe you go to a dealer to get a car, and the okay scenario is like the convenience scenario where you just say yes to everything. Like, yeah, sure, I'll put a, let's say it's a $20,000 car and you put $5,000 down, simplify some things. So basically your loan that you're going to get is a $15,000 loan. And let's say you say yes to that. Let's say you say, yeah, sure, a 6% annual interest rate for that car loan. The rest, let's say the loan term is 6 years. So in this scenario, the only thing that's different is that maybe, if you can, maybe you should put down more money for that car. So instead of again, assuming a $20,000 car, instead of putting down a $5,000 down payment, let's say you put a $7,000 down payment, which leaves you getting a $13,000 loan. Let's say that's the only difference. So basically what we have here is in the okay or convenient scenario, using that loan payment formula we just saw, we basically see that, okay, you'd have a monthly payment of basically $250 per month for 6 years. And, you know, you're getting a loan of $15,000, right? But then the total amount that you'd be paying to eventually own that car is more than $15,000. It's basically $17,900. Okay, fine. And what's the delta there? You'd be paying an extra amount of almost $2,900 over that $15,000 loan. Okay, so basically, just to move things along here, in the better situation, if it's possible, put a higher down payment, which means get a lower car loan. In this case, instead of a $15,000 car loan, get a $13,000 car loan. And with everything else being the same, ultimately, the difference in the savings that you'd see from these two scenarios is that you'd save about $386 out of from those 6 years. So from those 6 years, comparing these two different scenarios, you'd be saving $386. So another way to think about that is, well, for those 6 years, if you do 386 divided by 6 years, you'd be basically saving $64 per year by putting a higher down payment on the car, which translates to a lower car loan. Okay, so that's one scenario where basically you could have more savings from getting a lower car loan. Got it. All right, moving along, here's another scenario where the only thing we're going to change here is the loan term. So suppose, again, like before, you have the okay or convenient scenario. And again, let's say this time, again, $15,000 car loan, 6% annual interest, loan term of 6 years, monthly payment, as before, about $250 per month. Okay, and the total amount you'd be paying to own that car, notice, again, it's definitely more than $15,000. It's, you'd be paying an extra $2,900. All right, now, is there a better scenario? So let's say the only thing we're going to change here is instead of going to, what a lot of people do, just a 6-year car loan, what if you really aim to knock that out in 3 years? Then what? Would there be some savings to you overall? And the answer is yes. So here, notice that instead of paying an extra $2,900 for that car over the life of paying off for that car, 6 years, that basically you'd be paying a lesser amount. You'd be paying a less amount to own that car. And instead of 6 years, it'll be 3 years, and you'd be paying an extra $1,400. So as you can see, comparing these two different scenarios, you'd have a savings of about $1,400. So the way to think about that is, okay, $1,400, basically I'm paying for that car for 3 years. I've saved 3 extra years, okay? So I've saved 3 extra years. And so one way to think about that is, well, for those 3 years saved, basically you're keeping money in your pocket of $490 per year for those 3 years. Like, imagine what you could do with that money, $490 per year for 3 years, where you don't have to spend extra on that car. So the point is, as before, if you put a higher down payment, you're going to get some savings. If you aim to pay off your car loan shorter, in this case, let's say, instead of a standard 6 years, like a lot of people do, if you aim for 3 years, you're going to get some savings for each of the 3 years. Significant amount. Facts. What if the only thing that you change here is to get a lower rate? So here's where, again, in the convenience situation, you might be thinking, well, I'll just get whatever interest rate that I qualify for. If at a dealer or something, or they run your credit, and okay, you get approved for 6% annual interest, and it's convenient. You're like, yeah, sure, I'll go for it. But sometimes it might be better to get a different auto loan from a different place, like your own bank or a credit union, and you might qualify for an even better, meaning lower interest rate. So here, the thing that we're changing here in this analysis, in this comparison, is the interest rate. So don't be too surprised if you find a situation where, yeah, the convenient scenario is you get, let's say, I'm making this up here, quite high, but let's say, assuming a fair credit score, you get annual interest of 6% in the convenient scenario where you're just accepting whatever the dealer gives you. But then if you go to a credit union, you might qualify for something better, lower, maybe even 2 percentage points less of, let's say, 4% annual interest. What does that amount to in terms of savings? It amounts to about $1,000 in savings cumulative for those 6 years. So that translates to about, okay, for those 6 years, you basically saved about $167 per year. Wow, that you don't have to shell out. And that's from shopping around, being a little smarter and shopping around to get a lower interest rate on that car loan. Okay, now what if you aim for all of those things being better? So you're going to put a higher down payment, meaning the car loan that you're going to get is less. Let's say the loan term you're going to aim for to knock out is, instead of the normal 6 years, you're aiming for, let's say, 3 years. And you shop around and you get approved for a 4% annual interest. So comparing these two scenarios, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is you're going to save about $2,000. Now that's for the 3 years that you've saved up and all the other things as part of this strategy here, where you put a higher down payment, meaning you're getting a lower loan and number of loan years, or the term, is less, and the interest rate is also less. So basically that amounts to about $694 that you'd be saving instead of the convenient or lazier route of just accepting whatever it is you get from a dealer or whomever to get that car. So imagine, what can you get from saving $694 per year for 3 years? I mean, just let's imagine that. Say just even in 1 year, you could buy a drone, you could buy an Xbox, PS5, you could get one restaurant meal per week, you can buy a nice Gucci bag, you can get fractional shares of companies, you could go on a all-inclusive tropical vacation, you could put $694 in your savings account, you can buy some crypto, you can take that $694 and help a nonprofit, help refugees. You could even buy a nice watch. You could get 2 lattes per week. You could, with your $694 in a year, get a nice North Face jacket. You can get Yeezy sneakers. Maybe you resell them for a profit. You could get a bottle of Yamazaki or Hennessy, drink responsibly. You could get an education program, commit to that, up-level your skills. You could pay down on a credit card. You could buy a go-kart. Yeah. So a few things you could do with savings of $694. Analyzing some scenarios, and we were using that formula, that monthly payment loan formula. Let's go back to that and answer that question we were wondering about. All right, so our question is, hey, is that total payment, in this case, numerator T times A times R divided by all that other stuff, is that bigger than A? Like we think it is, but is it really? Is there a way to prove that so we can better understand what's going on here? And so what we could do is try and prove this by contradiction. So doing some math, basically. So we're going to suppose that instead of the total payment formula being greater than A, we're going to assume the opposite. All right, so we're going to do some math, and we're going to prove by contradiction. Okay, so starting with the opposite. So we're going to assume that the total payment formula is less than or equal to A. What we could do is, from here, we can divide both sides by A. So then we have TR over that stuff less than or equal to 1. Then we can take that denominator and multiply it to both sides. Then we get TR is less than or equal to 1 minus 1 over stuff. And then that stuff, that denominator, we can define it just to make things a little simpler. Let's just define it as X. Now, one important observation to make about X is that notice in the parentheses, we have 1 plus R over N. Now, R is the interest rate, that's greater than 0. N is the number of months, so that's 12. So basically, we have 1 plus R over N. So 1 plus R over N, that's greater than 1. So you have this thing in parentheses that's greater than 1 raised to the power of n times t. So n is 12, t is the number of years. Okay, so you have this thing in the parentheses that's greater than 1 raised to an integer, raised to a number. So that whole thing, x, is greater than 1. So now we have tr is less than or equal to 1 minus 1 over x. Let's multiply both sides by x, and then we get x times t times r less than or equal to x minus 1. Okay, now let's move some things around. Basically add 1 to both sides, and then we get this result that 1 is less than or equal to the product of two things, x times this quantity, 1 minus tr. Now, recall from before that x is greater than 1. So for this product to be also greater than 1, then that means that 1 minus tr has to be greater than or equal to 1. All right, but then if you move things around, then you get 0 is greater than or equal to t times r. So that means t times r has to be 0 or negative. But that's not possible because t is positive and r is greater than 0. So that's not possible. So we arrived at a contradiction. So that means that, yeah, it is correct that the total payment formula, which is equal to that stuff, is greater than A. Facts. Okay, so that formula checks out. And to recap, we analyzed some situations and some strategies so you could save a whole lot of money when you buy a car. And in this case, we looked at a scenario where, let's say you're buying a $20,000 car. So instead of doing the convenient thing of just accepting whatever you get in terms of a car loan and all that, if you shop smarter and spend better, you could get a lower car loan and pay it off in a short number of years with a lower interest rate. And all of that, we saw a situation where you'd be saving $2,000 instead of the convenient situation, which all of that amounts to about $694 saved per year for 3 years. And, you can imagine, what could you do with $694 saved? So today we saw that you don't have to be a wizard negotiator to be saving money on a car. And next time in another video, we're going to cover smart shopping for cars on another aspect we didn't cover today, which is considering the usage and maintenance cost for certain cars. And it can be painful to see what that looks like year to year to year, owning and paying for maintenance of a car. Feel free to subscribe to our channel. I'm Asan. When you plan well, you live well.